Hello, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my September wrap-up. Okay, so the first book I read was called The Deep and it was by Nick Cutter, and this was a horror sci-fi, and I wanted to read this book because last year I read The Troop by this same author and I absolutely loved it. And so in this book we follow Luke, and there is a disease in the world that people call the Gets, and it basically causes people to forget things. And it starts small at first, like people forgetting where they left something, to just then forgetting major events in their life, and finally it just leads the body to forget how to function and people die. And there is no cure for it, but Luke's brother and his team are actually studying a substance underwater, and it seems to be like a miraculous cure for a lot of things. So they are wondering if it would also cure the disease. And that substance is called ambrosia, and Luke goes down to the underwater station where his brother is, and basically things get worse from there. And this whole book, like the whole time, it had a very claustrophobic feeling, which made sense because the characters were in a station underwater, and so that was very like unsettling and creepy as well, and I really loved that feeling. And so the horror in this book was both psychological and physical, and in terms of the physical horror, there was a lot of body horror, which normally I love. I am all for body horror, but in this case, in this book, it had a lot of like body horror but with animals, and I'm not the biggest fan of that. And in terms of the plot itself, I enjoyed it, but I think like I wanted a little more from the pandemic, like the past before they got to where they were now, and just I don't know, I just wanted more in general, and I don't know if I went into it with like very high expectations or what happened, but I didn't love it. And I enjoyed it. It was a fun time. It was creepy. Like I said, it was very, like it had an unsettling feeling throughout the whole book, which was fun, but I didn't love it. And I think the like animal situation definitely contributed to me not loving this book. And so I gave it 3 stars. And this book and the next one I'm going to be talking about, there is a vlog where I say a lot more about it. So if you want to check that out, I will link it in the description and also up there. So the next book is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones, and this was also horror, and I wanted to read this book for so long, over a year for sure, and the synopsis is very vague, so I'm also gonna try to be very vague, but basically we follow 4 Indian American men, and they are like haunted by something that they did in the past. And like I said, I have been wanting to read this book for a very long time, and so again I had very high expectations, and sadly I didn't love it as much as I expected. And it was like it had very gory moments, which again, if it's on humans, I'm all here for, but it also had like some animal cruelty and just body horror on animals again, which like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of, but I did love like the cultural aspect of it, and I love the premise, and even the plot itself I really liked. What I didn't vibe with was the writing style, and this book had 3 parts, and we followed a different character in each part, and they all had very distinctive voices. And in the last one, I actually liked the writing style more, but the first 2 parts, I don't know, I didn't vibe with it. But I would still recommend for people who love horror, because this is a very loved book, and I think it was just a personal problem that I didn't connect with the writing style. So if you like horror, I would still recommend this, but personally I gave it 3.5 stars. Next, I read Knife of Dreams by Robert Jordan, which is book 11 in the Wheel of Time series, and this is an epic fantasy series that I have been reading. And I was so excited for this book because it's supposed to be the one where things get good again, and it fucking delivered. So many things happened in this book, and like it all felt important, and there were so many fight scenes and they were all so good, and the whole book was just so good. And there were two characters that have been like preparing to do like one thing each for like 3 books, and they finally did it in this book. And I have no complaints for the 2 characters that usually annoy me. Like, one of them annoys me, the other I just pretty much hate. But I literally have no complaints from them, like, at all. And also, we got some great news in this book that I already knew about because I always know spoilers for everything. But this was the book where it was revealed. And I have, like, only one complaint, and that is about Matt, because he's my favorite character, but I did not care at all about what he was doing. His chapters were the ones I was the least excited for, and that is just very sad. But that was literally the only complaint I had about this book, and I loved it, and I gave it 4.5 stars. And if you wanna know my thoughts, like with spoilers, I have a reading vlog for it that I will link in the description. And up there. Okay, so I'm just coming in here to say that I filmed this video, like the part that you have been watching, a couple days before the end of the month. So I actually managed to finish another book, and since I'm putting this clip in this part, you might have guessed that it's another Wheel of Time book. I finished book 12, which is The Gathering Storm, and I'm gonna have a video for this book next week, so I'm not gonna really get into my thoughts about it. I just wanted to say that I finished it because this is my September wrap-up. I'll just say one thing, it's my favorite book of the series, and I gave it 5 stars. So that is all I wanted to say here, and let's get back to the video. Okay, so next I read Postmortem by Patricia Cornwell, and this is the first book in the Case Carpeta series, which is a crime mystery series. And I have been wanting to start this series for a while, and it finally happened. And so in this book we follow Kay, and she is a medical examiner, and there is a serial killer that is killing women, and he has already killed 3 of them. And we actually start the book with the crime scene for the 4th victim. And there is another like side plot, I guess, even though it wasn't really like a side thing, it was like a main thing. But there is someone at work who is kind of conspiring against Kay. And so, like I said, we start actually with the crime scene for the 4th victim, and we get to learn what is similar to the others and what is different as well. And we go through a list of suspects, and there's a whole investigation, and we obviously learn who the killer is. And I liked the investigation, I liked all of the process to get there, but once we found out who the killer was, like, we didn't really get an explanation as to why he was killing, like the way he was killing, like what he was doing. There was no motivation explained, and I would have liked to have gotten some explanation. And also, I would have liked the book to focus more on the killer, because we spent a lot of time, like I said, with the situation with Kay at work. And it's not that I didn't care, but I was here for the serial killer, you know? Also, like, with that person who was conspiring against Kay, we did get kind of their motivations. We got like more from that than from the killer. So yeah, but overall I really enjoyed it, and I really liked the like forensic detail, forensic science in this book. I really appreciated that, and it was a fun time, and I gave it 3.5 stars. And this book is part of another vlog with 2 books that I'm going to be talking about later, and I will link in the description as well. So the next book I read was Chapterhouse Dune by Frank Herbert, and this is book 6 in the Dune series, which is a science fiction series. And honestly, I wasn't looking forward to reading this book because I didn't love the previous one, but also like I wanted to get this series over with. So I read it, and I didn't love it, but I also didn't hate it. And honestly, like, I didn't care at all about the main plot of this book. And since this is the 6th in a series, I'm not gonna get into details, but basically there were 2 sides, like 2 groups of people who were trying to destroy each other. And I didn't care about that at all. And also there was like a transformation happening in the environment, and I mean that was more fun than the main plot of them wanting to destroy each other, but still. However, there was like one side plots, or maybe like two, I guess, that I was actually invested in. But yeah, like I don't have any strong feelings towards this book, like either good or bad feelings. It was just, it happened. I read it. I was bored through a chunk of it, but the ending was pretty fast-paced and exciting. So, like I said, like I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I don't have any strong feelings towards it, but I am glad I read it. I'm glad it's done, and I gave it 2.5 stars. Moving on, I read All Good People Here by Ashley Flowers, and this was a mystery sort of thriller, and I was actually really excited to read this book because the author is the host of my favorite true crime podcast, or just my favorite podcast in general, really. And so, yeah, I was very excited to read her book. And in this book, we follow two timelines. We follow Margot in 2019, and we also get chapters from 1994 with another character. And so, when Margot was, I think, 6 years old, her neighbor and friend was murdered, and she left town later, and now she's back 25 years later. And there was another young girl who was kidnapped. And so Margot is wondering if the crimes are connected, and she starts investigating. And like there was a bit of the book in which I felt like the plot wasn't really moving forward, but then it moved. But it was pretty much all focused on the 1994 crime. And even though like I was more invested in that one, I would have still liked to have gotten a bit more from the 2019 crime, because even like in the 2019 timeline, Margot was still investigating the crime from the past. And although we did learn who committed like the crime from the past and the crime from the present, I still wanted like more, investigation from the present. But having said that, I did like the investigation that we did get. I really liked it. I liked how it all came together, and I also really liked the plot twist. And I have seen reviews of people like really hating the ending, and I can 100% understand that, but personally I don't agree. I actually personally like the ending, and I'm not sure like a good sane person should, but I did like it. So I actually had a really good time with this book overall, and I gave it 4 stars. And this and the next book I'm going to be talking about are the ones I mentioned are in the same video for postmortem. So again, if you want to hear more thoughts about it, the video will be linked in the description. Okay, so the last book I read was Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz, and this was another mystery. And this book was so interesting. So we start with Susan, and she is a book editor, and she basically starts telling us about a book that changed her life. And not just like how books change people's lives, like how they think or whatever. No, like it literally physically changed her whole life. And then we start reading that book that changed her life. Because, like I said, she's an editor and she is reading a book from an author she already works with. And that book itself is a mystery. And so we get to read the book that she's reading. And there is a detective in that book who is investigating some deaths in a small town. And I loved like the book within the book, because it was so like cozy, old school mystery vibes. And it was just, I just felt so good reading it. I absolutely loved it. But basically, when we get back to Susan, we realize that there is something wrong with the book she's reading, and it leads to a whole new mystery in Susan's life. And also, like, the two books really did feel like two different books. The writing was completely different. The vibe was totally different. It was so good. And in Susan's part, we like had a thriller element as well. And there was a moment there where I was really worried and really stressed, but I loved it. And the ending was very satisfying as well. And I literally have absolutely no complaints about this book. And I obviously gave it 5 stars. And so these were all the books I read in September, and this is also everything for this week's video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, give it a like and subscribe, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!